WSTM Syracuse. Now, Channel 3 News with Vic Wright, Colleen McVeigh, and John Medley. The 11 o'clock report.
Good evening. The Pearl River continues to swell. It may rise another foot tonight, and that would endanger the New Orleans suburb of Slidell. The flood has already forced 3,500 people to get to higher ground, and another 25,000 may have to get out. More from Dan Molina.
Rushing River is, in fact, Interstate 10 near Slidell, Louisiana. Floodwaters closed the highway yesterday evening. Many of the points where streets become streams in residential areas of Slidell are now boat landings. People headed out with their belongings. People headed in to gather up another boatload or to pump out their property. The sandbagging hasn't stopped for 4 days. There are people here who have worked themselves to exhaustion, slept for 4 or 5 hours, then picked up a shovel again. These people are fighting against water coming directly out of the Pearl River. In other places, people have barricaded themselves against water coming from another subdivision. That protects them, but it creates a much more severe problem for their neighbors. A force made up of every law enforcement agency in Louisiana and the state's military reserves has been mobilized to keep the peace, catch the looters, rescue the stranded, and keep the sightseers away.
Now on, you're going to be known as Rescue Team 1 through whatever.
The Weather Service is now forecasting heavy rain late this week for the upper Mississippi Basin. Their prediction is that this will not add to the flooding in this area, but they say it will keep the water levels from falling as quickly as people here had hoped. Dan Molina, NBC News, Slidell, Louisiana.
Unfair, sloppy, and inaccurate. 3 words District Attorney Richard Hennessy might use to describe reporting by the Syracuse newspapers. Relations are strained between the two. Today, the DA came out and offered his side of the story. Jerry Barsha reports.
District Attorney Richard Hennessy is not backing off his recently instituted policy of answering in kind only written questions from Syracuse newspaper reporters. Hennessy claims he's been misquoted a number of times in print, and his complaints to editors and publishers get nowhere. The DA says he expects justifiable criticism, but not biased and inaccurate reporting.
What I totally object to is the fact that in certain instances we have been unfairly and inaccurately criticized, and that some of the reporting leaves much to be desired.
Hennessy says his staff members are solidly behind his stance with the Syracuse newspapers. He pointed out he provides daily news releases and court calendar sheets, so he is not stopping the free flow of information. I asked Hennessy to comment about a newspaper editor who said Hennessy would recant well before election time.
I'm not going to be intimidated by their editorial after editorial. They keep saying I have to run for election. Let me remind you that they didn't endorse me the first time I run, and they're not going to intimidate me now by suggesting that unless I knuckle under and do their bidding, that they won't endorse me.
What burns Hennessy most of all is a newspaper headline indicating Hennessy blamed juries for a low conviction rate in rape cases. A chart he used defied reporters to find that quote. He denies saying anything like that. It's possible the Syracuse Press Club may try to mediate the standoff between the local newspapers and District Attorney Hennessy. Hennessy sent a letter on Saturday to publisher Stephen Rogers. Hennessy says he stands ready to meet with Rogers to solve the stalemate. Jerry Barsha, Channel 3 News.
Chicago votes Tuesday. Whatever the outcome, it will be a first. The first Republican mayor in 52 years or the first black mayor ever. If Harold Washington is to do it, he needs a big turnout in the black community because the race is too close to call. Ken Bodie has more.
The primary, 72% of the black vote turned out. 80% of that went to Harold Washington. To win on Tuesday, Washington knows he has to do better on both counts.
April the 12th. Oh, yeah, I'll be there.
In churches, community groups, everywhere, there are Washington rallies.
We are going to get up and walk. And we're going to walk our people to the polls on April 12th.
Turnout could be very high in Chicago. In the black areas, it could be as high as anywhere in history.
We're projecting an 80% turnout and a 95% plus vote for Harold Washington.
Some say Harold Washington is not the best candidate because of his conviction for failing to file income taxes.
It's irrelevant. It has nothing to do with the man's character. It has nothing to do with the man's programs. It's just an issue to hide behind racism.
Blacks have never controlled a city hall as big and powerful as Chicago's.
For those of you who believe that they're going to be cooking barbecue all over City Hall, once he takes office, I just want you to know there will be no barbecue cooking above the first floor.
The whole question now is turnout. One Washington worker said, in the black community, voting is mandatory.
Well, if we don't do it now, we might not never be able to do it.
Ken Bodie, NBC News, Chicago.
The proposed Benedict Avenue housing project is back in the news, and a court confrontation is coming up this Tuesday. That's when a lawyer for the Syracuse Common Council will go before a state Supreme Court judge. Conifer Development wants the councilors to testify at a May trial. Conifer is suing because the council blocked its Benedict Avenue plan. Councilor Nancy Lorraine Hoffman says testifying at the trial would violate the councilors' rights.
What we have here is an attempt by a disgruntled member of the community, namely Conifer Development and its attorneys, to bring those members of the Common Council into court to testify as individuals how they do their homework, what state of mind they were in at the time they made an individual vote.
Conifer's plan calls for 56 low-income housing units to be built in Hoffman's district. The council changed the zoning to prevent that. Hoffman says Conifer isn't trying the law, but trying the councilors instead. It was a day to remember what was perhaps the greatest tragedy of World War II, the Nazis' persecution and mass murder of the Jewish people. Holocaust Memorial Day was commemorated around the world, and tonight in Syracuse, about 200 people gathered at Temple Adath Yeshurun. Speakers even included the Episcopal Bishop, Ned Cole. The featured guest, writer Arnost Lustig, offered a word of warning.
If you have a bad experience, the only good thing you can do with your experience is to learn from it. So we are speaking about it not only because of ourselves, but to make people know.
On display tonight, after a couple of years out of view, a series of sculptures called the Holocaust. Sculpted by local art teacher Carolyn Cree, they're being considered for the proposed National Holocaust Memorial in Washington. Cree says she tried to show the suffering through the forms and skeletal figures. Next, President Reagan's peace plan for the Middle East gets rejected by Jordan. And some progress is reported as negotiators try to settle the month-old Metro-North train strike in New York City. Details when the 11 o'clock report continues.
Why do 100,000-mile flyers choose United?
Perhaps you've heard, my kind of town is Chicago is, and my kind of airline United is, because nobody gets you to the Windy City like they do. Nobody.
No other airline flies more nonstops to Chicago with great connections west.
My kind of airline, at my kind of price.
People who fly for a living fly United's friendly skies.
That's a lot of tea. Indeed it is, sir. But which tea is it? Salada tea, sir. My dear chap, I just said it's a lot of tea, but which tea is it? That's Salada tea, sir. Salada. Do you hear, Steam?
Salada. What we are is what we are, and that's Salada tea.
Jordan will not get involved in the Middle East peace process. Today, King Hussein said he could not negotiate with Israel on behalf of the PLO. This is a flat rejection of President Reagan's plan for peace. The details from Paul Miller.
King Hussein had hoped to join the peace talks proposed by President Reagan, but today he and his cabinet concluded Jordan could not act separately or on behalf of anyone else in any peace negotiations. Last weekend, the King and PLO chairman Yasser Arafat reached a tentative agreement to work together on a peace settlement. Hussein had said he could not enter peace talks without Arafat's support. The tentative agreement fell apart when it was presented to the PLO's executive committee. The committee raised new conditions, and Arafat did not return for more